You see me now?
Yeah, I can see you. I can see you now.
All right, right on. What's up, dude?
What's up? I'm gonna give a bit of an intro of the show, and then we get started.
Sounds
So,
good.
welcome to the Asterysk podcast. This is episode number 5. My name is Rodney, and in this podcast, I interview really cool people who are super passionate at whatever they really specialize in doing. And today, we have a very special guest. We have the world of yesterday, Urbex crew based off of Minnesota. So, please introduce yourself, and yeah.
All right. Well, my name's Isaiah Murphy. I'm a 20-year-old from Burnsville, Minnesota. I grew up here, born and raised. Um, when I kind of jumped onto the Urbex scene, I was a little younger than most when they usually do. I was like 13 years old when I first jumped in. And I mean, I wasn't actively Urbexing at the time. It was just kind of a place that my brother took me to, and it really sparked my interest into urban exploration. If you're familiar with the Gopher Munitions plant or the ULANs in
Yeah.
Rosemount,
Yeah.
yep, that was the first place I ever went to. I've loved it and been fascinated with it ever since, and that's kind of where I got my start. That was obviously way before we started the channel, like before me and my buddy Andrew, uh, who I formed the channel with, really got involved and got coordinated to start filming these adventures that we were going out on. So yeah, that's a little bit about me um, and how I jumped onto the Urbex scene.
Cool. Uh,
Mm,
for me, it's not really Urbex, but one of the first things I did for Urbex was I wanted to climb a high school really badly, go on the top. So that was like the opening gate of my Urbex journey. And I was biking downtown in Diggytown. I was like this big ass building, United Crushers. I was like, damn, that looks so cool. Like, is it still functioning? But then I just
mm.
scouted around a little bit. It's like abandoned, and then I found a way to get inside, and it was insane. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a hell of a start.
Yeah,
Crushers.
yeah. I really like watching your channel. Like the beginning of it is like a very informative section. Gives a little bit of the history. Uh, I was I was at Pokegama the other day, uh, and I watched your video beforehand. No, actually, I watched a video after I went to Pokegama, and the in your video it says like 300 plus people died there from like tuberculosis or something, and just like it's spooky. Like so much history has happened over here. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it was. I'd say, you know, with Pokegama, you just walk in, you feel the energy right away. I mean, I'm a bit of a skeptic when it comes to, hauntings and uh, sort of supernatural stuff like that. But a place like Pokegama with a history, a dark past like that, you feel it right away the second you walk through that door. It just dawns on you like, wow, you know, this was such a big part of our history, and so few people know about it. It's incredible. But yeah, anyway, you can go ahead and continue with what you were saying. Sorry about that.
no, it's all good. If you have something you want to add, then you can add it. Yeah,
Okay.
it was a bit spooky. Like I'm pretty a bit of a skeptic myself, but just some eerie noises. That was just probably just the wind and stuff, but it added that extra layer of like spookiness going there. But yeah, as I was saying before, I really like how you add those informative parts of your Urbex trips. Uh,
Mhm.
so what's your favorite all-time Urbex spot in Minnesota, you have to say?
It's really hard for me to pick a favorite, because I can kind of cherry pick uh, all different aspects or qualities of a location. There's a lot of things I like about places, and then there's a lot of things I don't like. Um, but I'd have to say overall, my favorite location is a location that we just went to. Um, I can't give out too much information about it, just because I would kind of want it to be a surprise, because it is the next season. By the way, we are working on a whole new set of videos for season 4. Um, we've already had a couple of them finalized. We're just kind of ironing out some kinks and stuff and some subtitles and other issues with them. But yeah, basically I can reveal, that it is a school. It used to be a former high school back in the 50s, and just the atmosphere of the building, you know, and it kind of plays into that liminal spaces that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Just a place that, you know, is operating out of its context and time. And that was really fascinating for me because seeing a building like that in that state, you know, it's just kind of surreal. Like, it's kind of hard to believe. But yeah, that was probably my favorite location. I'll reveal more, you know, once we drop the trailer and everything. But yeah, no, it's probably my favorite location thus far.
Can't wait to pick it out once you put it up on YouTube.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely, man. And um it also kind of plays into one of those other questions, you know, you were going to ask me was um with the scariest or craziest experience I've had. um it was it's kind of hard to explain where we were exactly in the school. We were in the cafeteria area in this like auxiliary room, so it wasn't the main cafeteria. The main cafeteria was essentially the small corridor, and then you know it was just lined with lunch tables and stuff like that. But then there was this adjacent auxiliary room with no windows, just two doors on the far ends of either side of the room. And we were inside this auxiliary room, and um, there was a hole in the wall, and we saw that through the hole in the wall, there was it opened up to this massive gymnasium. And when we shined our lights through it, and we were like, "Oh my God, you know, like we got to find a way in there. You know, that looks really cool, and there's a theater and everything in there." And we're just like, "Wow, you know, we got to figure out a way to get in there." Um, and as we're looking through this hole, we hear just this massive crash. Like it sounded like somebody tipped like an entire filing cabinet over, and it couldn't have been more than 50 more than 50 feet away from us. And we were losing our shit, you know. We weren't exactly like screaming or anything. We just froze, you know, and we shut our lights off. We didn't know what it was. We had no concept of what it might have been. It could have been, you know, another person in the building, an animal, you know, something supernatural if you believe in that sort of thing. Um, but yeah, we have no explanation for what happened. You'll see more in the video. We'll even provide a little. We'll probably show the clip before we end up posting the video. You know, just because I've never had anything like it happen before to me, and it was really quite a strange, surreal experience. You know, and we said we couldn't find the source of the noise. There was no scampering off if it was a person, you know, that we would have heard. Uh, Nothing. It was bizarre, you know. I'm really excited to show that to everybody. So
That'll be a good attention getter for like the new season. Just
oh yeah. Yeah, the second we got that on camera, man, we're like, oh boy. You know,
yeah.
this is gonna sell it.
Personally, for me, my favorite spot is Ham's Brewery, and it has like so much culture and history to it.
Mhm.
It's insane, and plus it's so complex too. Getting there
Yeah.
is half the adventure. Yeah,
Yep.
I just love it.
Yeah, no, funny story about see, this is the thing about Urbex. There's so many stories that I've and experiences I've had that you can't get anywhere else, you know. And it's sad, you know, because a little bit lonely because not many people do it, you know, so you can't really relate to too many people with it, unless you have a lot of friends that do it, you know. Urbex like, yeah, you remember that time, you know, I fell through the ice at Fruin Mill, but um, but no, with Hams, we actually almost got trapped inside, uh, me and Andrew, when we were filming that video. On our way in, the only way in at the time, and we had been to the place multiple times before, but, you know, right now it's kind of a lockdown. You know, it's really difficult to get in without breaking in. And we never break into places. We never force entrances. We don't do that sort of thing. But the time we went, there was a board over the window and it wasn't fully secure. So it was maybe like two of the corners were left unbolted. So, you could just kind of peel back enough, and climb in through this windowsill. Well, getting in was the easy part, and it took us 5 minutes to get in to this window where it normally would have taken us like 2 minutes. But anyway, after the exploration, we came back to the same window, and now we have to climb through this tiny glass pane that's about maybe a foot tall by a couple inches wide. We have to climb up the wall and then squeeze out sideways parallel to the building to squeeze out of this crack in the board. And we were there for at least like 30 minutes, and we were panicking because, like, how the hell are we going to get out without breaking this board down? It's like this would be this would be really bad, because we're having to break down, something that's put in place to keep people out in order to get out, and we were afraid we were actually going to have to call somebody to pull us out because, it's right next to that police station. And
Yeah.
literally, like, I shit you not, the window was in direct view of one of their windows, so if a guy walked up to that window and looked down at where we were, it would have been over,
Wait, was this at the power station or the brew house?
The power station.
Oh, yo.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was something else, man. I tell you, like, probably one of the whenever I explore with Andrew, we can never catch a break. There's always something that doesn't go according to plan.
Yeah.
And I mean, usually nothing ever goes according to plan, but I swear, whenever I explore with him, there's just some sort of third party or something that just comes out of left field, and you're like, well, I didn't expect this, Now we're in trouble. But I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off,
No,
we can,
no,
we can keep this moving.
just we gotta. It's all good. This is a podcast. You share whatever you want.
All right. Yeah.
So, I recently been to Hams, and the way you get inside of the brew house is locked up, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just really upset about it because I really want to go back inside.
Yeah, no. I've considered it long, that last time we got in, we pretty much concluded like, hey, like, there's no way we're getting back in here if we want to come back to it. So let's get as much of it as we can on video, for people to see. And, I don't think we're coming back here. It's just going to be too hard to get inside. But I agree with you. It is a very, very interesting place, and offers a lot of variety. It's got, the cellars, and it's got, the brew house and the power station. It's got all the warehouses on the other side, and it's got a lot of verticality to it.
Yeah.
Which is what I love, I even saw that, clip of you doing like flips and tricks inside of it, and I was like, oh man, like, you better be careful, dude. Like,
Yeah.
a friend of ours actually fell inside there, and he was in a pretty bad shape. He fell through one of those holes in the brew house. I won't reveal anything more about it, but yeah, no, he's okay now. He made a full recovery and everything, but yeah, no, it was a very scary situation. We took it very seriously, because a lot of times when that happens, like, you look at all the mill deaths and people that have fallen and stuff, it's no joke. I mean,
Yeah.
it's fun, just do it safe. That's kind of our big thing with it,
Yeah. And
But yeah.
okay, so let's move on. Are there any Urbex channels you look up to as inspiration?
There's too many. Are you familiar with This Is Dan Bell at all?
Not, no.
Okay. Well, definitely look him up because he's probably one of our single most important inspirations. A lot of our cinematic sort of style, you know, when we do like the history uh, segments in the first season at least, and then we just kind of do that weird like reverb effect, you know, to make it seem like we play like maybe like an old soundbite or something or old song in the context of a building where it's appropriate, you know. Um, and we kind of like have it on a reverb or like uh, kind of a strange fading effect, you know, sort of like it's
Yeah.
like faintly playing as we're exploring. And we get a lot of that from him. He's really creative with how he does his Urbex videos, you know, and it's not really many quick cuts. Aside from him, you know, the whole context and history of the building idea we kind of got from Proper People, of course. I'm sure you've heard of them.
Uh, I I have no,
You
unfortunately.
haven't?
Yeah.
All right. And then sort of like occasionally, you know, a little bit of exploring with Josh in there. We're not huge fans of him. I mean, but he does go to the most interesting locations, I think.
Most definitely.
Um, yeah, very jealous. um, what else? And then, of course, you know, there's some pop culture mixed in there too, you know, with like, say, like Fallout and their cinematics and sort of like that. We kind of like to replicate that sort of style. Um, and just sort of uh, we're kind of in an identity crisis right now, you know, because we're our channel name is The World of Yesterday, you know, but a lot of our intros, you know, use contemporary music like rap or like ambient music and stuff like that. But we want to try. Our end goal is we want to try and sort of transport the viewer um, into this state of mind where they can see, you know, hey, what was this place like maybe 20, 30, even 50 years ago? You know, it was occupied with people and people with lives as complex as our own, you know, and stories of their own. That's why I really like that video you sent me, you know, because that almost hit it right on the head of how I feel with some of these places and just the vast open space and places designed for human occupation, and then it's just empty, you know, and it's kind of a surreal feeling. But we want to sort of transport people back in time, you know, to appreciate the historical aspect. That's kind of what we try to set ourselves apart from all the other Minnesota Urbex channels, you know.
Hmm.
Um, it's kind of difficult because, you know, there's a lot of really great content that I see from uh, you know, Eric and Miles and Free for All and some of these other guys. Um, so it's like, you know, what can we do differently that sets us apart from them? You know, and it's sort of this historical aspect that we want to nail and teach people about. Like, hey, you know, this place uh, right now that we're going to, you know, it was a big deal back then, and we want to sort of provide context for that and history. But yeah,
Yeah, I learned a lot from like just watching those tidbits from your videos in the beginning, that historical part. We're gonna go back to this topic in a little bit, but I'm gonna move on to the next question.
sure.
So, do you ever explore outside of Minnesota?
Um, we've been trying to branch out a little bit, you know. We had one location, that hospital. I don't know if you've seen the video,
Yeah, I've seen that video. Yeah.
the Wisconsin one.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was kind of the one time, and I was working with Grant Matthews at the time. By the way, if you don't follow him already, uh, top-notch photographer. You know, the guy knows his stuff. Really good with the cityscapes and landscape photography if you're into that sort of thing. Um, but yeah, that was the one time we branched out, and the only reason we did was because it was relatively close to us, and it was a pretty sizable location. Was we had a hell of a time getting into it, you know, but I think it was worth it in the end. And I really one of my biggest regrets, is filming at night, because there was so much of that place that we didn't get to see in the video, that you didn't get to see in the video. And the only reason we had to film at night was because gaining entrance during the day, we probably would have been caught, you know. And there was just this entire other wing of the hospital that we didn't get to show because it was too dark to film with lights, Otherwise, we would have telegraphed our position to anybody outside. They would have seen we were in there, And that's what sucks about exploring at night is, you're aware of other people, but you can also make other people aware of you very easily,
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Let's add it on to that topic. So, what's your camera equipment situation like?
Okay, so we're also I personally am looking at a jump to a 4K camera. I'm currently filming with a Canon 80D. Camera came out like 4 years ago, going on 5 years now. Max it can film is 1080p and 60 frames per second, which is what we've been working with. We have a GoPro for mobile shots or hands-free shots, like when we're climbing ladders or something, or unable to really get a steady shot with the DSLR. And then we have a drone, which I also got the Mavic Pro 2.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. Yeah, that cost me a fortune. And I think that's probably our single biggest improvement is the drone, because I think now that we have an eye in the sky, not only can we get these really cool aerial shots, but we can also do sort of like a reconnaissance. We'd fly over the location before, like, hey, is there a guard walking around, or is there, other people here? What are some like hazards or something we should be aware of? But yeah, that's kind of the equipment we're working with now, I should say. But we are looking at going to make the jump to 4K soon, hopefully, full 4K, with the A7S3, I believe.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, no, but costs the price of a used car, so
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, we're kind of working on fundraising for that, but I mean, what we're working with now works just fine too. We're just a lot of it, with cameras, you'd be surprised at what you can do with post processing, and just color grading. You can make even some of the lowest end cameras and their footage look really good. Like just through color grading and exposure and highlights and adjusting all those levels,
Yeah.
So we're just kind of trying our best, to keep up with the times, because we're falling behind a little bit in terms of quality. But we're trying to stay on top of it.
It's tough trying to go for cinematic shots of urbexing because especially if you go in the dark too, there's a lot of noise and low light with your footage. If you don't have if you don't have a good low light camera, then like it's tough. Especially with the GoPro, it's not good low light. But yeah, like carrying all this equipment. I went to Ham's Brewery in the hopes to shoot a cinematic video. I carried my phone case with me, my tripod, my drone, and my camera, and I had to fit through that small window through the power station area, and just it's tough.
Yeah, yeah, no, it is. And we that was when I learned not to bring a tripod with me, actually. It was Ham's Brewery, because getting that thing through the window, like you say, it's a doozy, getting that stuff through the window. Certain places we're considering. I also have a Ronin, like a DJI Ronin, the gimbal.
Yeah.
And I haven't used that yet for anything. And I'm really interested in some of the shots you can get with it. However, since it is such a it's kind of a difficult piece of equipment to maneuver you know, around and just kind of bring with it. It comes in this big case, you know, and it's just kind of a process to get it all set up. And I don't know, I don't really feel like it, you know, going to some of these places. Maybe if I'm at some place, you know, where there's no risk of getting caught, or I just kind of can go at my own pace, I'll bring it. But I intend to use it a little bit more often, at least for exterior shots of the places we go to. Um, but yeah, um, again with the dated equipment, there's a plugin on the uh, Ronin essentially for newer cameras, and my camera is too old for that, so it has to use this infrared flash bulb thing, which connects it to the Ronin, essentially. So what I'm saying right now is that there's buttons on the Ronin. You know, you push the record button on the Ronin, and it'll start recording on your camera. But
Hmm.
unfortunately, because my camera is so old, it doesn't have that cable, that RSS cable that plugs directly into your camera to do that. It has to line up with that infrared sensor on the camera, this little bulb. And if that bulb moves maybe like a couple centimeters to the right or to the left and it doesn't quite make the mark, well, you know, you're SOL. Like, because it's just not gonna match up, you know, and work for you.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, anyway, you know, that's kind of that with the camera equipment.
So let's talk about the Minnesota urbex scene. And
Hmm.
actually, let's go beyond that. I'm just so jealous of all these other locations like Gary, Indiana, Chicago, or like any Eastern European country. There's always like some crazy urbex location there.
Yeah,
Dang.
yeah, yeah. No. Is this a we talking about like gentrification, you know, and just kind uh of urbex spots, or
Oh, I was just we're gonna go that in a little bit, but just like how crazy like the urbex scene just over in those locations are. Because I was on Flickr looking through photos, and I saw this like old Soviet airport with like a airplane, destroyed airplane. It's just so cool. Just like
Mhm.
how crazy the urbex scene outside of Minnesota can be. And
Yeah.
yeah, that was just, I was just showing a few examples, just how there's some cool spots. And see, so yeah, let's go to the topic of the Minnesota urbex scene and how big it used to be. So you familiar
Mhm.
with Action Squad?
Yeah, absolutely. They're also an inspiration of ours. But that was also way before we started shooting. See, Andrew and I were exploring long before we formed the channel. We were exploring, like, I think start of our sophomore year, so we would have been like 15, 16 years old at the time we started going off and doing this stuff, you know, right? Basically, right when we got our driver's licenses, you know, we're like, oh man, we can go anywhere we want, you know, and that was kind of a big deal for us. Um, but before that, even, um, we were made aware of the Action Squad website, and you know, that was it's kind of funny, you know, because we didn't quite realize that all those locations on there, most or all of them, have either been torn down or repurposed, you know. But of course, since the website hasn't been updated in so long, there's no like note or asterisk denoting that fact. So we would drive all the way out to these places, and you know, it'd be like an apartment complex, and we'd be like, what the hell, where is it, you know? And we spent the entire day just going through this list, and we're like, wait a minute, you know, when we finally dawns on us, this website hasn't been updated since like 2003, you know.
Yeah.
So it took us that long to realize it, and we're like, we were wondering why the photographs were like so low quality and stuff, you know, but that was what they had at the time, and they're really pioneers of the whole sort of movement. um you know, I have a lot of respect for those guys because um they went really in depth with their explorations, you know. And us, we're not so hardcore as, you know, people would think we are. We play things very safely when we explore, you know. If there's like a really tight space that you have to squeeze through and stuff, most of the time we're gonna look at it and be like, yeah, unless this actually opens up to something, I'm not gonna going through that space. Which you could argue, you know, it kind of defeats the whole point of exploration. You know, it's to take risks and stuff like that. But we just hear too many stories of people getting stuck, and we'd rather, you know, not be having to call the fire department, or, you know, just get stuck down there and nobody know where to look for us, you know.
Yeah,
But
play on the safe side.
yeah, yeah, which is, I mean, we'd like to sort of get a bit more riskier, take a few more risks, definitely in the future, because some of these places haven't been filmed yet, you know, and they're only seen in photographs, and like, wow, that would make a really good video, but it's also a very difficult location to access, and there's a lot of risks associated with it, you know. But yeah, Minnesota, the urbex scene, getting back to that question, is it's tough, at least for the cities, to find good spots, mostly because they've been torn down or remodeled, at least what we find to be interesting spots. um, the United Crushers just recently, they bulldozed the entrance. I don't know if somebody's found an entrance since, but and you know, like the pig nut mill and some of these other places, you know, we're starting to see that they're kind of cracking down a little bit, because they know how popular it's getting, and people are getting into these buildings, and you know, they got to keep them off. So it's, at least in the cities, it's kind of hard. But the coolest locations I've ever explored, they're way out in the boonies. So like, expand, look at the bigger picture, you know, look at the bigger state of Minnesota, and just really think big, you know, because there's so much out there, you know, because it gets into our head and we're like, wow, there's like nothing to explore in Minnesota. But if you look at all these small towns and stuff, not even like an hour away from the cities, you have abandoned schools, you have like wastewater treatment plants, sewage plants, you have all sorts of these abandoned agricultural buildings and farmhouses, and a lot of these places still have old antiques and stuff inside, you know, um, which makes it a whole lot more interesting, because, you know, it's like, kind of tells the story of the place in a way, and what it was used for.
Yeah, for sure. Schools, abandoned schools are probably one of my favorite spots to go to in terms of like history. I'm gonna get
Mm-hmm.
back. I'm gonna reference that even more in a little bit. But
Mm-hmm.
do you use the UER forums at all?
We did initially, but now what we've been doing, and you know, we get people asking us for locations all the time, of course, you know. Um, we don't really reveal, you know, where places are, because, you know, at first we were looking at Free For All's channel, and they've been to all these crazy places, you know, and we're like, where the hell are these, you know? And we were the guys that would literally go into DMs and be like, hey, you know, where is this, and how do I get in and stuff. And then all of a sudden, you know, when we found Pokegama, we're like, wait a minute, you know, we took a step back and we're like, because we initially found Pokegama from some other uploaded video to YouTube. Video is still up there. It was uploaded like, God, like 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and it wasn't a very well known video. And then unfortunately, what kind of happened was we filmed Pokegama and it just blew up. We didn't expect it to, you know, and we made the mistake of showing the entrance and everything. And I went there on a return visit, and it looks totally different than what it does, or what it did when I went. When I went,
Yeah,
you know, very little graffiti, and and we actually feel really bad about that, you know, because, you know, I mean, there are a lot of people out there that don't mean any harm, and don't try to destroy stuff, but there are also a lot of people that are the antithesis of that, you know, and would rather steal or break stuff and kind of destroy these places. Um, our opinion on graffiti, you know, is if it's like actually done intentionally and purposefully, like if it's an actual art piece, like I we're fine with it, you know, and it's cool to look at. But if it's just done, you know, just with no reason at all, just kind of scribbles on a wall and stupid profanity and stuff like that, you know, I think it just kind of detracts from the value of it. But finding our locations has mostly just been through looking at other people's videos, like other lesser known channels, and sort of usually they'll have things in the description like, oh, this is in certain town or whatever, but they don't have anything more than that. Or like, okay, well, now we know this is in a certain town, and we sort of triangulate. We look for landmarks in the video, you know, like, hey, there's a water tower over there and it's facing this direction and the sun is in this direction, which means that, and we just kind of triangulate on maps, you know, where these places are. And now, you know, thanks to that method, we now have like over 80 locations, you know, that we have yet to film just using that method. And I mean, it's kind of hard, you know. I can understand that it's hard for some people to do that, you know. Some people just want to know right away where something is. But I mean, again, with our philosophy, you know, we don't want to be responsible if somebody goes there and gets hurt, you know. I understand we're not technically culpable or responsible, but we would feel horrible if somebody went to one of these places on our behalf and, you know, got injured or was committed a crime or something, you know. Just things like that, you know. We first and foremost, you know, if our viewers are interested in it, just do it safely, you know, and kind of figure it out yourself, you know.
Yeah. Going back onto the graffiti part, like people just drive like a good 1 or 2 hours just to spray dicks all over the wall. I'm
Yeah.
just like, come on, man. Or just some random stupid thing. Like there's some genuinely good art. If you've been to Pig's Nuts, the upper levels, the art is like phenomenal. But
Yeah.
drawing a big dick, especially in Pokegama, there's so many of those. It's just like,
Yeah.
why would you do that?
Yep, and swastikas and just racist, anti-Semitic garbage, you know, and it's stupid, you know. It just you look at that and in that space, and it just completely detracts from the experience because it's like, oh wow, you know, I feel like I'm in a high school bathroom, you know, with all this stuff like written on the walls, and I don't know, but obviously, you know, we can't control those people and we shouldn't try to. But you know, we like to preserve these places for the next person. You know, it goes back to the take only pictures, leave only footprints sort of motto that urban explorers agree on. And I think it should stay that way, you know.
Yeah, that's an iconic quote.
What have you heard that before? Or?
Yeah, I've heard it before. It was in an article I read a long time ago.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the concept of liminal spaces a little more. So
Right.
I'm gonna give the definition towards the audience. It's like a seemingly normal established place, but something seems slightly off about it. A good example is like a Chuck E. Cheese with all the power on, but there's no kids or employees around, or like a airport terminal with nobody sitting around. It's just empty. And essentially just like established locations that you're familiar with, but they're like empty. And have you ever felt something like that during your Urbex experience before?
Yeah, I was kind of laughing towards the end of that video because you know, he's talking about the photographs and like, hey, let's go out and take some liminal space photographs, and I had to laugh at that, you know, because I was looking at some of the pictures he took, and they look like almost identical to some of mine. And I mean, it's kind of one of those weird things, you know, that you don't really like feel comfortable starting a conversation about because you're not really sure how to describe it to somebody else, you know, without them thinking you're crazy or weird. But but yeah, no, I totally kind of experienced that. You know, it's just bizarre being in those places where you would normally see just a ton of people and you know, occupants and people going milling about their business, and then all of a sudden it's just nothing, you know. And yeah, it's got a like strange familiarity to it sometimes too. Like sometimes I'll kind of like blank out, you know, when I'm exploring in a certain place, and it'll kind of seem like familiar, you know, like he was talking about. Like I've been here before, I've been somewhere similar before, and it kind of triggers that sort of response in your head, like deja vu or Mandela effect sort of stuff. You know, like I have a vague memory of this, whether it was maybe in a dream or I was actually in a place like this. You know, I don't know. It's an interesting topic, and I never really thought about it till you sent me that video last night. So, um, yeah, no, that I didn't even know there was a word for it. Really, you know, they're making words for everything now. But yeah, it was really interesting stuff.
Next time you go urbexing, have like that mindset and like things just your urbex experience is like so much more different. Uh,
Yeah.
I've been to an abandoned high school that closed in the early 2000s, and
Hmm.
it was mesmerizing because like it was so modern, but yet everything was so like desolated by nature. And like
Hmm.
I was in this classroom with all the desks propped up and nobody was there. The ceiling was leaking out asbestos and like all this crazy stuff, and it was just like people had an entire high school experience here,
Yeah.
and it was just insane that like I'm here like after all their experiences are gone. You know what I mean? Just mind blowing for me.
Yeah. Um, getting to that, what's really interesting, what we love most about our videos is it draws a whole it draws all kinds of demographics. You know, it's not just people interested in urbex, it's graffiti artists, it's people maybe like local historians or um, people that have had experiences with the place that are curious, you know, what's become of it. And our favorite comments that we get are from people that uh, inhabited these spaces or frequented these spaces back when they were in their heyday, you know, from way back when. We had comments on the Candyman caves from this guy who's like, it's like, wow, you know, I enjoyed your video. Me and my friends back in the day, you know,
Yeah,
used to ride our dirt bikes through the cave, like back when they, back before they filled them in with concrete and rubble and stuff, you know. They were wide open to the street, and he and his buddies would ride his dirt bikes through these caves, you know. And we had another guy on Pokegama talking about how it used to be after it was a sanitarium, it was a seminary school for priests, and he was a student there, and they would play hockey out on the that little lake, not or no, the Snake River, which is not the lake on the other side of the sanitarium, but it's that like tiny sort of. It's hard for me to describe because I haven't been there in so long, but it's the Snake River essentially. Just runs alongside the road on your left side when you're going towards Pokegama.
yeah,
Um,
I know what you're talking about.
yeah, yeah, and he's telling his experience about you know, sort of living there and studying to become a priest, and he was you know, he would play hockey out on the Snake River in the wintertime with you know, the other students. And this would have been like 60, 50 years ago, 50, 60 years ago. And I find that stuff incredible. You know, I love listening to stories from people um, that were around back then. you know, and knew what this place looked like when it was fully operational. Um, that's kind of why, you know, our channel is the way it is. When we were coming up for a name, we were actually on the way to Pokegama when we were coming up with a name for our channel because our channel hadn't been made yet. And Andrew and I were just spitballing ideas. We had some crazy ideas, you know, for channel names, some really stupid ideas. And then something kind of clicked when he said, you know, world of yesterday. You know, it's an entirely different world and time. When you think about, you know, like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you know, you just keep going back, dialing back the clocks. Um, like if somebody from today went back in time, what would they think of us, and vice versa, and how they go about their lives, you know, uh, was different than ours, you know, with the advent of technology uh, like cell phones and computers and uh, other technology like that, telecommunications equipment, you know, life got very different for people. Um, and talking to those people from before those devices were invented and before many of the societal changes we've had in the last 2 decades, it's interesting, you know, to see what people thought of things back then, and how these spaces influence people's lives. So interesting stuff, you know.
You've seen the Dishonored 2 video I sent you, right? The timestamp of
Uh, I watched a little bit into it and then I got interrupted, so I apologize for that. But I
yeah,
get the general gist of it, um, where he's kind of in the mansion,
yeah,
and
yeah. That's
yeah,
the segment. Uh,
yeah,
so I've always imagined myself urban exploring, having this timepiece. So the main character has this timepiece where if he flips it up, there's a little screen you can look back into the past. You can travel back in the past and back in the present. And just like I imagine myself just having that little timepiece out, just looking through them wherever I'm urban exploring and see like what happened before. Uh, and there's just I'm gonna talk about a bit of a cinematic project I've been meaning to do for quite some time, but unfortunately, Ham's Brewery's closed, and I'm really, really sad about it. But there's a lot of media. There's no other urbex spot I can find that has as much culture and media as Ham's Brewery. Like there's, if you watch the Rathskeller, um,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that stuff. Uh, I wanted to make a really cinematic video of the concept of liminal spaces and that
Mhm.
timepiece aspect where I create keyframes from the videos and then have like a transitions from the past into the future of like so let's say the really big vats in the brew house,
Yeah,
they're empty now because they got removed and salvaged to another location, but lined up the frame in such a way so that it's from the old video and then
yeah.
transitions into the present and it's all destroyed and desolated. Like that's something I really want to do with follow-up music in the background too. It's like
Yeah, no, it's funny you mentioned that because that's we've had ideas like that too, you know, like um past, present, and then doing some like really cool transition of you know, like an old photograph or a video, but have it so that the camera's in the exact same position as the photograph or video, you know, like line up the frame like you said, you know, and then do like a fade into present day, you know. We've had lots of ideas like that. Unfortunately, we were too must not have been paying attention, you know, to didn't get the shots that we needed because we were rushing or something else was transpiring at the time. But yeah, no, it's really cool to play around with just kind of the ideas you can come up with editing. It opens so many doors. Um, and I think that's a really cool project idea. Um, and yeah, I agree with you. You know, there's not much media on some of these places, like Fruin, for instance. You know, there's only a few photographs I can pull up on the internet, you know, of the place, and There's no videos of it from back when it was operating or anything like that. It's all about documentation, and sometimes people, I mean, our lives right now, like, are they worthy of documenting? What it's somebody gonna think in 30 years or maybe even 50 years? Like when our schools, if for some reason they become abandoned or something, and there's no media of the schools at the time, which now I don't believe. I mean, there's so many cell phones out there and smartphones that there's got to be just tons of videos of these places, well, people are using them anyway. But back from the times, at least from the places that we explore and the times that they were operational, people weren't walking around with film cameras, just filming casual everyday life. You would have been looked at funny because you know because it's like, what the hell are you doing with this big Super 8 camera or something walking around, filming just mundane everyday activities. So, but yeah, that's a really cool idea, and we've definitely had similar ideas with our cinematic approaches to videos.
I want to do it so bad. Like I wrote a letter to St. Paul Brewing. Hey, I'm a historical photographer, and
Yeah.
I'd like to get permission to take some photos of the area, the vacant location. So I'm trying to. I want to do it so bad, but
Mhm.
yeah.
Any response or?
No,
Yeah.
I've been trying to like call them so many times and emailing them, but no response.
Yeah, that's another thing with hold on a sec, sorry. That's another thing with urban exploration that's just kind of a pet peeve or annoyance of mine, is that people are always like, well, why don't you ask permission? I'm like, half the time they never get back to you, or if they do, it's almost entirely going to be a no, or it's just they'll allow you to go in, but either under supervision, or they're going to have you explore a very limited space of the building, because of potential hazards within the building that they don't want you to go near. And you know I think certain locations it'd be more appropriate to ask for permission. Like, we're planning on filming the Fergus Falls Asylum, uh, just because of it's a massive building, and it's in very good shape for how old it is and how long it's been abandoned for. It's been abandoned since the early 2000s, but there's little to no graffiti or damage to the property. And we would really like to film the interior of that and show people what that's like. Um, but we're also, going to get in contact with the owners first, to see if they'll even let us go in, because something something that's in pristine condition such as that, I think it's definitely appropriate. Either that or No Pemming Sanatorium up in Duluth,
Oh
if
yeah,
you're familiar.
I am.
Yeah, um, just because they're trying to turn those places, to renovate them and either turn them into a museum or into housing for disadvantaged people, and um, I think it's important to film these places before that happens, in their original forms, because that part of history sometimes gets lost, you know, um, at least with gentrification and repurposing of places.
Let's talk about some just the beauty and like themes of Urbex. One of the things that I find really uh things I love about Urbex is that it's like isolated from society and like the establishment and just nature overtaking man, if that makes any sense, and
Mm-hmm.
just really beautiful. Have you played The Last of Us?
Yep, I have.
Yeah,
I,
just
I haven't played the second one, but I have played the first one. Yeah.
it's like so it's beautiful, but yet ironically, it's everything's all destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like you know what I'm trying to say here. It's like
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I know. I get what you're trying to say. Uh, you know, um, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, you know. I've figured that out very quickly with urban exploration, you know. When I look at, say, like the Gopher munitions plant, and I see those tall smokestacks, you know, towering above uh, just this swath of greenery and concrete intermixed. You know, I'm thinking to myself, God, that's a perfect photograph. See, I see a perfect photograph because I'm a photographer, you know, or a perfect video because, you know, I'm a videographer and I make videos or clips. Whereas somebody just driving by, you know, oh, it's just a stupid old abandoned building, you know, covered with foliage. And but me, I do see the beauty to that. It's really kind of the dichotomy of nature versus man, sort of. That, hey, you know, like you can tear down as much forest and um, you know, sort of foliage as you want, but it's gonna come back, you know, and it's gonna come back with a vengeance. Because you know, you go to like the Twin Cities Army ammunition plant, place is just overgrown with vines and trees. There's trees growing inside of buildings, you know, for God's sakes. Like it's crazy. It's surreal. And yeah, nature's a powerful force, you know. You can't really fight it as much as you want to. It's gonna win every time. And there's a beauty to that, you know, where it's almost like two sides of a battle uh, that are fighting, you know, man versus nature, and nature's winning, you know, slowly but surely.
I was in this abandoned building, and I was on the top part of the floor, and
Mhm.
just this iconic scene. There's like a hole in the roof, light shooting through the roof, like vines and stuff are coming down from a little bit from the hole, and
Mhm.
just so beautiful. Like nature's overtaken this area, and it's all destroyed. It looks, as you say, the beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and just I think it's just so cool.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
no,
uh, you want to add on to that?
yeah, just a little bit, you know, like going back. It really depends on how you look at perspective. I think, you know, plays a big part in it. Um, just because, like, you know, I'm with Andrew sometimes exploring, or at least way back when we were exploring. Um, you know, I'd look at something, I'd be like, hey, look at that. You know, that looks really cool. And I want to get a picture of that. And Andrew'd be like indifferent to it, you know, like, huh? You know, like, whatever. I'd start thinking to myself, you know, am I crazy? But then, you know, it kind of surprised me sometimes. You'd be like, oh, dude, look at that. You know, like, wow, like how many times you see something like that, you know, like vines creeping in through the windowsills, almost like the building's being swallowed, essentially. And just stuff like that, you know. And I think really it just depends on what you find interesting, you know. Again, eye of the beholder. But anyway, that's all I wanted to add on to that. So
So the thing about Instagram Live is that it only could be an hour at a time. So we have like a minute left before it shuts itself off.
okay,
So I have a few more questions to wrap things up. So we're gonna have to reset another live video if you're cool with
okay,
that.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I'm gonna have to end
All
this
right,
video, and I'm just gonna start up another one.
sounds good. I'll join in a sec. Anyway, what were you gonna segment into?
So let's talk about the future of Urbex and like let's say 500 years from now, because we went from exploring abandoned pyramids and civilizations, and now we're exploring abandoned buildings, and just imagine like the possibilities of like space travel, Urbex in the future. Just yeah, let's have a discussion about that.
Man, that's a lot to unpack. um, yeah, no, it's crazy. What I was whatever I whenever I hear something or a question similar to this, I always think of there's like a funny tweet I saw a couple of years ago, you know, where it's essentially like 200 years from now they're gonna uncover Disneyland and assume it was a mouse worshiping civilization, you know. like, um, I think about, the historians and how hard their job is sometimes, when they don't have the context for certain um, symbols or structures that they find. They just kind of assume like, oh, this was a temple, this must have been a temple, or oh, this was a government building, when in reality it was something entirely different. Um, but anyway, getting into your question of space travel and stuff like that, I I don't know so much if Urbex by that time at least will be a fascination as much as like colonization of other planets will be, sort of new frontiers. Um, of course, I'm sure there'll always be historians, that are curious about humanity's past, but I think by that time, we'll have either left Earth and be somewhere totally different and start up entirely different civilizations on other worlds, other planets. But I could see, there being a small uh, group of people that are very interested in, learning more about humanity's past and seeing sort of, how they got to that point, how their ancestors lived like us, and the kind of knowledge that we possessed. But yeah, no, it's an interesting question, and I can't. I mean, I don't really have the foresight to answer it. That's so far into the future. I don't even know if we'll still be here by then. Like at least human. I mean, obviously I'll be gone. You and I will be gone, but you know, if humanity will still be here in 500 years, we might be somewhere totally different with how fast technology is advancing. But
Nah, I think I'm just gonna upload my mind into a computer like Mr. House and just live on forever. uh, like some ideas I had was like just imagine a big spaceship, a really big spaceship, and like so these are gonna be just for some thought exercises and just like as in terms of creativity with this topic. But just imagine a big spaceship and like the basement section's like cut off due to some weird catastrophe. And there's like you can urbex in that section of the big spaceship.
yeah,
Or like let's say there's like used to be old moon colonies and now it's all destroyed due to a catastrophe. And you're just a space urbexer and you're just like going around checking out these old abandoned colonies. And or even like I say even 200 years from now, if like climate change does melt all the ice and the sea levels do rise, there could be like a Bioshock scuba divers down Los Angeles with like checking down all these buildings. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
definitely
no.
future Urbex.
Yeah, no, you've definitely got a more of a foresight and imagination than I do with it. I didn't even think of that. And especially with like colonies on other worlds, I suppose that could be a thing, like, oh, there's this old research base that was abandoned because of, a hazardous materials leak or something like that. And I'm gonna go check it out, because it's been sitting there for 20 years and it's on one of Jupiter's moons or something like that, something crazy. But yeah, no, it's um, I think it'll be a lot different from what we're used to today, just in terms of like logistics and um, like I don't know how social media or any other platforms will really where people will share their experiences, how that's going to work, and whether or not it's going to be for research purposes like documentation or just for fun, because I feel like if we're in space and rather than a planet, and we're just on a ship, that's gonna whether or not we decide to leave, is gonna be up to whoever the captain or commander of the ship is, you know. Um, Whether or not we get to go out on our own and just see these sort of things. but I could be wrong. That's so far off in the future that I can't even fathom, the changes that are going to take place if humanity is still around by then, you know.
Yeah,
So,
just a little thought exercise that I wanted to mention because who knows, there might be documentation of this podcast and be like, yo, this podcast were the first people to reference this futuristic urbex that we're doing right now.
yeah.
So, I don't know. Uh,
Yeah, no, it's kind of like a time capsule, like I feel like it's really interesting to see what people think about the future. Um, you uh, even like 50 years ago, people would bury time capsules like shoe boxes full of old stuff and drawings of what they think the future would look like. And it's really fun to comb through some of those because some of the ideas are you're like, yeah, we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there with flying cars and stuff like that. And um, you know, I'd love to look back at this podcast, just that we're doing right now in 50 years and be like, wow, like either I was a complete idiot or I'm a complete genius because was spot on, or you were spot on about something that was going to take place. But yeah, interesting stuff.
all right, so we're about to wrap up this podcast. So I have a really dumb scenario that's unique to this podcast that I ask every single person that's a guest. So let's say you're walking down to your local Walmart and and you're the first person that's there, and uh, nobody else is there. But however, there's a zombie apocalypse about to happen, and it's about to be Black Friday pretty soon inside the Walmart. And let's say the zombies are like Walking Dead zombies. So, uh, what are the 5 essential items you want to grab that first come first serve that are essential to you? But you can assume that you can grab other things too, because there's always going to be a good supply of food. But what are the first 5 things that are really rare that you want to grab before everybody else steals everything? And everything's free because it's a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, yeah, 100% off still. Um, I would probably grab, if I'm just thinking off the top of my head, I'd immediately go for first aid. I'd go for warm clothing. Uh, I'd also go for some self-defense weapons, if there's any left, like bats, knives, blunt objects, just things like that. Fire starters, definitely. And then, God, for my fifth item, I'm I'd probably go with some sort of I don't know, like maybe like a GPS or map, compass,
Oh
sort of
yeah,
thing. But yeah, that's that's just what I can think of, if I'm just spitballing. I'm sure, if I was in the actual situation, I'd be evaluating a lot more, what I need. But yeah, no, that'd be the first 5 things I'd grab.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. This is gonna be the last question, and this is gonna be possibly one of the hardest questions because, like, it's the future. You don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, but where do you see yourself in 5 years, and where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Um, 5 years. I don't know if I mean, I obviously can't do this whole YouTube thing forever. I was never in it for the money or the career or anything. Um, but 5 years from now, I'd probably be, because I am going to be joining the military very soon here. Um, Probably still be under contract in 5 years, working with the military. Um, and then 10 years down the road, hopefully, got some kids of my own, a family, probably not going to be doing this whole Urbex thing when I'm taking care of kids and stuff. But yeah, no, just happy and with a family, successful, own a house of my own, hopefully. Um, yeah, that's all I can. I don't see anything really major, you know. But life hits you when you least expect it, and
Yeah,
you got
sure.
to seize every opportunity you get, man. Um, and when you let those things slide, and you're just gonna stay where you were. If you A good quote, that I live by is, "If I always do what I've always done, I'll always be where I've always been." Um, so you shouldn't ever, be afraid to branch out and take risks or try something new. And I try to tell that to myself every time, like doing this this is the first podcast I've ever been on. Um, and I mean, it's relatively simple, but it's still a podcast nonetheless. Um, and I think that, life is worth living, and you should get as many experiences as you can while you're here, you know. Um, but yeah, 5, 10 years down the road, I just hope to be happy, healthy, moderately successful, have a stable life, and you know, continue to live.
My parents are always telling me like, man, if I was your age, I wish I would have done this or this or this, but there's nothing stopping you. Like, try it out. Like, you don't have to be like a professional at it. You know what I mean? Like, in terms of like trying new experiences, like, don't become like complacent. Just like I'm not talking about you specifically, but I'm just talking about just
Yeah,
in general. Uh, there's nothing stopping you from trying something you always wanted to do, and you don't have to be extremely good at it as long as you're having fun and you're getting self fulfillment from it. That's what's important. So yeah. Uh,
absolutely.
as I get older, once I turned 18, I was like, oh shit, I can get in big trouble with my Urbex exploring even more. So
Yeah.
I gotta be extra careful. Uh,
Mhm.
but something I want to add on with my Urbex experiences is that like it's one of the things I'm gonna tell like I have an Urbex crew, and we're just gonna be like old one day, sipping on tapioca pudding, just talking to each other of our war stories, our Urbex experiences. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Uh, like when I just envision like my Urbex experiences, there's like a sepia filter to it, and just of us just having the time of our lives as young men. And I'm sure you have the very similar ideas as well when you look back. Uh, it's just Urbex is like such a thrill-seeking sport, and that's not a sport, but like experience.
Yeah.
And yeah, we would discuss the nuances of it. And if you guys are watching this podcast, just go on a road trip, listen to it, and listen to our experiences. And yeah, so that's me, the podcast for today. I really enjoy having you on and hearing about your perspective on Urbex. And yeah,
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, man. It pleasantly surprised me. I, really like the depth of the questions you asked, and um, really like the way you think about certain things. I think we think very similar uh, in regards to Urbex and how we feel about sort of the past and relevant history of these places, and just sort of similar experiences. Um, and I can't wait, to finally release what we've been working on for so damn long, and we haven't said a word about it, for 6 months since our last video. So um, we'll probably get a post out either tonight or tomorrow, and then we'll drop a trailer relatively soon about some of these places that we're going to. And I'm really excited to share these experiences with people, with you, and with others.
yeah, for sure. I'm excited to watch it. So,
All right,
and
sounds good, man.
yeah, it was nice
Cool.
talking to you. Have more cool experiences. And yeah, I'll talk to you later.
Yep. Talk to you later, man.
Yeah.
Thanks.